Fake news and police helicopter cover-ups for November 2nd. At 8:11 a.m., a Cessna flew in the 11 p.m. line, which is the fake copter route that cuts across my roof, that became solidified after the event where they let me out at 11 p.m. to spotlight me on Caladad. A Cessna flew in that line, and it was tuned to sound like a helicopter. It had this clatter, and at first, because it was above the clouds, I was like, oh wow, there's a helicopter. And then I realized it was a Cessna, and that's because they flew a helicopter by at 8:12 a.m. I think it was the day before, above the clouds. And that was so that they could have footage of a helicopter possibly doing something with the spotlight and say that it happened in the past. And so I'm making this video on November 5th. And I have many other examples of that. Yesterday, they flew, my storage was full, and they tried to have a Cessna use it up. And then they flew a military helicopter with wheels and did a turn in the behind 24191 in the Copter cover-up. And then immediately after, because my video wasn't that good, they sent the police helicopter to turn there, and then a UN cover-up copter to say, oh, well, we can't be sure what it was. And then they're going to take that video and say that it happened in January 2014, and then say, oh, yeah, so he always does that. There was no personal interaction. And so they were trying to cover up for the spotlight incident, because that originated on October 30th when they were doing the spotlight and pretending to search out behind the two-story house. And so I'm not sure what's going on with that now. And then they had the Cessna out doing spotlight stuff ever since. Another example of the change of dates and falsifying evidence is the fact that they've flown that same helicopter and it has wheels. And the reason for that is so that I say, look, it has wheels. And then they edit those wheels out, and then they have a helicopter with no wheels, and they say it happened before. And they'll be like, look, there's no wheels. And another event happened where they flew that copter in a similar line to the double Black Hawk threat, but closer to El Dorado Park. And I said, there's wheels, and I drew a picture. So they're going to edit the wheels out and say that it happened a long time ago. At 12:25 a.m., the Cessna with the clatter sound did a U-turn at the two-story house across the street. So it was coming from Deseo-Solero intersection, and then did a U-turn to say that, oh, look, this massive object, this landmark, that's why every plane and aircraft ever has to turn here. But the tree is probably 60 feet tall, 65 feet at the most, and the grade is probably 5% at the most. So why are all the aircraft so low to the ground to make that an excuse? Why is that a permissible argument? At 12:37, a helicopter, I looked up colors on Wikipedia, and it's a mix between fern blue and pigeon blue, and it had a front-mounted spotlight. And if you're looking down the street towards Solero Deseo intersection, it crossed right to left near 24092 and Solero Deseo intersection, and then it came up towards the two-story house, so it was on a left curve. Then it made a right turn at the two-story house tree to sell the fact that that's such a landmark that all the aircrafts need to turn and get away from it, and to also have a variation. Underlying that is the fact that it's a tall landmark. And then he did descend drops in time, and then he changed the time and did a bit smooth, and then some more descent drops, and that's to sell the grade, the 5% grade, and say that it's this massive hill. And then he was tilted on the side as he did that, and he was doing a straight line cover-up because he was flying in a straight line, but he had a variation of the straight line. And then at the same time, the Cessna copter was flying all around and doing certain things. I think he was also adjusting his spotlight every now and then for the October 30th event cover-up. At 2:50 p.m., a short, fat copter, the one that I call has the Yoshi nose, which was the slight rounded front like the police helicopter, and the three-prong horizontal tail. So it has a short tail from this larger head, but then if you look at it from behind, it has a horizontal piece with three prongs. And so that helicopter turned behind 24171 in the two-story house to make a point of the fact that there's a grade and a tree there to sell the hill to account for the military copter turn. And so it did a right turn, and then it did a left curve. So that's a cover-up for the straight line dart that originated with the police helicopter. And then it did descend drops, which every aircraft has done. And then he did a little ascend-descend. So he was changing it up and accounting for other things, maybe even the jumbos. And then it was either the police helicopter or the UN copter, and I think it was possibly two-tone with the white top, blue bottom, but it was slightly military tuned. And these are some of the things I'm talking about. There was a phase before when they combined all of the helicopters, and this is one of them, because that body has been used, that model has been used for the UN copter cover-ups, and it's also a police copter model. But at the same time, it was tuned military and possibly painted with the two-tone blue-white, or possibly painted as a UN copter cover-up. And then, so all day long, every day, the Cessna Copter's out flying in the lines, the new October 30th area and stuff like that. So I saw him from 315 to 340, but he had been around a lot. At 428, the Cessna Copter, I saw him some more, and he was flying, looking for clouds to turn his light on in. And one time he flew near me, and then as he was coming, he shut his light off, and it was very conspicuous, and that was so that I would make a mistake or say something about the light, just like the wheels on the helicopter. And then at 6:46, it was dark, and there was a police car on Castilla Street, the street below mine, closer to Geronimo, and it was directly behind 24171 and 181, and it had its lights on the top of the car, but they were projecting light upward onto the low clouds. So that doesn't happen. It was ridiculous. And that's in the October 30th area. And so they proceeded to have a light show the entire night. They kept making figure eights, doing all kinds of things on the clouds. Then they would fly the Cessna Copter by, and eventually the police helicopter and Cessna Copter as well. At 6:58, the police helicopter, I saw him near Geronimo Montilla, headed towards Geronimo Alicia, and he was a little farther out, and that's because they've started incorporating a farther out for the October 30th event, and they take those circles behind the two-story house that were a little farther out, and they say that he was on a line towards Geronimo Los Alisos because that's a problem spot. I have videos of him doing crazy stuff because I chased him out there over Heroes Park and by 24-hour fitness. And so he came up and he did a light change. So he did a U-turn and he changed the lights, and then did a U-turn and changed the lights, and then he did some circles. And then he continued out towards Geronimo Los Alisos, and he was doing pulses. And then he flew through the October 30th event line, which then covers up for all that nonsense, because then you can say, oh, well, that just happened. He was taking a call while he was flying on his routine line. And that's another example of just always incorporating a damning event into a routine. At 7:09, the police Cessna Copter was flying around the helicopter and all near the October 30th line and the other lines of the helicopter that aren't routine but are claimed to be, and he was changing his lights. At 7:13, I had low storage because of recording all of the Cessna Copter, and so they flew the police helicopter